When Mustafa Kemal Atatürk established the Republic of Turkey in 1923, after the collapse of the Ottoman Empire, he faced strong opposition from both Turks and Kurds alike. However, the Kurdish resistance against his rule was especially significant and led to the beginning of various independence movements which are still relevant to this day. In 1925, a Kurdish rebellion led by both secular Kurds such as Khalid Gibran and religious Kurds such as Sheikh Said became the first major Kurdish rebellion against the Turkish Republic. By 1925, Mustafa Kemal had made it clear that he was not going to tolerate an independent or autonomous Kurdistan. Previously, Kemal had given Turkey's Kurds some leeway for cultural expression because of his need for Kurdish cooperation over the uncertainty of Turkey's future. However, after the Treaty of Sèvres was cast aside in favor of the agreement reached at Lausanne, the sentiment among many Kurds in southeastern Turkey became ideal for conflict with Ankara. This, coupled with Mustafa Kemal's radical measures for a new secular Turkish republic, brought a new wave of Kurdish nationalism to the fore. Sheikh Said took advantage of the situation to push his movement for an independent Kurdistan and began organizing Kurds in southeastern Turkey for a major revolt. The 1925 Kurdish rebellion, commonly referred to as the Sheikh Said Rebellion, was the tipping point for Kurdish nationalists in their struggle in Turkey during the interwar period. However, it must be noted that the groundwork for this rebellion had been in the works for several years. An organization known as Azadi, which means freedom, led by former Hamidiye cavalrymen and Kurdish officers in the Ottoman army, had formed in 1921 for the purpose of establishing an independent Kurdistan. The leader of the Azadi organization was the secular Kurd known as Khalid Gibran, who had initially fought against the Ottomans in the Turkish War of Independence and sided with Atatürk. However, after realizing the policies of Atatürk, which discriminated against Kurds, Gibran opposed the Kemalists. Sheikh Said, who was a religious leader, and the Azadi organization had common purpose, and they established contact to combine efforts. Azadi intended to launch a large rebellion throughout southeastern Turkey on March 21st, 1925. However, Sheikh Said launched his revolt against the Turkish government prematurely on February the 13th. The following policies of Atatürk led to the opposition from both religious and secular Kurds: that only the Turkish language was allowed in courts, which could lead to misunderstandings; that only Turkish was taught at schools, and religious schools were closed, therefore no education was available for Kurds. Taxes had to be paid several times a year, and no benefit was perceived from the taxes. Another policy was that the Turks also settled Turkish refugees in the areas of Kurdish majority, attempting to achieve a Turkish majority. Sheikh Said once stated the following: Islam has been the sole bond of union between Turk and Kurd, and that the Turks have broken it. The Kurds must now ensure their own future. End quote. This was his effort to gain legions of followers, whether they understood nationalism or not. However, many Kurdish Islamic scholars strongly disagreed with this statement. For example, The famous Kurdish scholar Said Nursi called for unity between Turks and Kurds and advised Sheikh Said not to rebel. Rather, he advocated a more pacifist approach, and he himself resisted Atatürk's policies through his writings. Ismet Pasha felt martial law should be more widely applied out of fear that Islamists would rally to the cause, but the Turkish government doubted that there was a following outside of the Kurdish community. Kurdistan's rugged terrain and lack of infrastructure prohibited Turkish forces from rapidly deploying soldiers in the southeast. The problem was solved when Ankara negotiated with the French in Damascus to allow the transport of Turkish troops along a portion of the Baghdad railroad to re-enter Turkey from Syria. The French allowed the Turks to move into the Taurus Mountains via Syria. Soon the rebellion was crushed and Sheikh Said and his followers were arrested and executed by hanging. Prime Minister Ismet Pasha made Ankara's policy towards the Kurds clear in a speech in which he stated the following: "We are frankly nationalists, and nationalism is our only factor of cohesion. Before the Turkish majority, other elements have no kind of influence. At any price, we must Turkify the inhabitants of our land, and we will annihilate those who oppose the Turks." Mustafa Kemal and the radical Kemalists manipulated the Sheikh Said revolt, exaggerating its potential overall effects in the country. As they were aware that to implement the radical reforms, they needed the total silence of any opposition. The Sheikh Said rebellion resulted in the law on the maintenance of order, passed a month after the Sheikh Said rebellion, which enabled the state to ban any organization or publication considered harmful to public order in the whole country for 2 years. Under this law, nearly 7,500 people were arrested and 660 were executed. After another rebellion which broke out in the hills of Mount Ararat, more than 20,000 Kurds were forcibly settled in western Turkey. The last revolt occurred in Dersim in 1937, in which 13,000 people died as a result of the destruction of villages, mass murders, and forced settlements. After the 1930s, Kurdish nationalists were not able to continue stirring up political rebellions due to various factors such as heavy state suppression and the exiling and executions in response to the earlier Kurdish rebellions. Kurdish nationalist activity took refuge in silence in Turkey, while Kurdish Islamic identity was only able to survive clandestinely after this period. Many Kurdish nationalists left Turkey or narrowed their focus to a course of cultural nation building. Many leaders of the Kurdish resistance dispersed to various countries in the Middle East where they were able to write freely.